Good morning, PT on Ice community. It is Monday, March 18th. Monday, March 18th, only 2 days away from spring. My name is Mike Eisenhardt. I am the host of Mondays with Pop here on PT on Ice, and I'll be talking a little bit about sort of looking backward today, and hopefully folks will jump on. It is 8:30, and we are ready to roll. Looks like some people are catching on now. Hey, Sean, good morning. Happy Monday. So I'm going to start my clock. Hey, Alan, good morning. I'm going to start my clock and get rolling here so that we can get right on with our day. So we got 15 minutes to talk a little bit about looking backward in order to move forward. And the reason why I put that up there is because last night at 9 p.m., which is kind of our time slot, we had our first live session with the current intro cohort, which is a really great group. They've got like 25 or 30 people in there. They're kind of really lively and lots of really good insights. This is a thinking group for sure, which is super cool for me because they're definitely putting the dots together. And I love that because that's really what the course is designed to do. What the course is really built to do is to bring people along in this manner of thinking, to get them kind of along this journey of there's just so much more that we can offer to the public. There's just so much more that we can do. You know, we're not limited to the moving parts. We're not limited to a single part. We're talking about the whole person and changing kind of the trajectory of their health overall. You know, and way more than that, right? Because if we change the trajectory of the health of one person, and they're connected to any kind of community, family unit, community group, whatever it is, we're by default going to change the trajectory of others to a lesser degree, of course, but we get that kind of degrees of separation effect. And so you have this kind of exponential effect when you make a major change in someone's life. When they get excited and inspired about being healthy and sort of all the freedom that comes with that. And that's really what it is there's just this tremendous freedom that comes, this huge weight that's lifted off. I call it the yoke, so you hear me talk about free the yoke. But that basic idea of when the burden of malaise is kind of taken off a person, when the burden of poor health or ill health is taken off a person, it's like they have a whole new lease on life. And so this is a great time of year to talk about it. I don't know where everyone's at, where you're watching or listening, but here in New Jersey, we are getting dangerously close to spring. I mean, not only is it almost literally spring, in a couple of days, but you can see it. The sky is a little bluer. The sun is starting to shine. Things are beginning to green up a little bit, which is awesome. Friday, I had my first youth rugby practice. For those that don't know, I coach a youth rugby program, and we had our first session, and we had sort of the adults out there and the kids, and we were sort of playing together at a touch level, no tackle. We're not beating up the little kids. But the basic idea of it is that it's all signs of spring. It's all signs of change, green shoots coming through the soil. And so in many ways, I felt like last night was the same kind of thing on the intro cohort. There's this idea of kind of green shoots coming through the soil, more and more people thinking this way and starting to see it. I asked the question, what about this so far has surprised you? And I love the fact that Edward Mathis, who's in with us, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, he said, not a lot. Like, it didn't surprise me that much, sort of the literature behind this. I kind of expected this. Man, that is awesome, because that tells us that like the beginning of the conversation is starting to change. And so to do what we really need to do next, in addition to continuing to pull people in and hopefully bring the level of acumen up, and with any luck, inspire people to realize that their professional life, their reason for existing as a conservative care professional is not simply to be the best, at one single part or the best at even the moving parts, but like to change lives, to change health on both the grand scale societally and also on the individual in front of you level scale. But the idea is that we are health professionals. We're not moving part technicians. And so once we can get more and more people there, I think we can continue to expand into new markets and define all of the various things that we can help with, right? And so you have to almost have this trust to do this idea that health is something that liberates people in all aspects of their life, right? Like, it is a freeing thing. It literally liberates you to do whatever it is that you're setting out to do. And so that is kind of the leap of faith. And that leap of faith, I think on the provider side, that's where we're at. We're not yet making that leap. as a group. We're seeing it. We're kind of getting the idea. People are sort of looking over the canyon a little bit, sort of putting their toes on the edge and looking over, but they're not ready to make the jump entirely. And what that means is that we can't see how all the dots connect. As a profession, I would say that, and I can only speak for PT, but I'm assuming that OT and some of the conservative docs and nurses and nurse practitioners and some of these folks who are kind of in this conservative care bundle, we're not inherently risk takers. I wouldn't say that we're just a group of like teaming entrepreneurs. We don't have that risk-taking, kind of ADHD, mindset of like, hey, now on to the next thing. Now let me try this. And some of us do, some of us definitely do. But as a whole, I would say that that's a small population. And so that's scary because we can't all see the path forward. We can't see exactly what we want to see. And so that's really what today is about. Today is about this idea of, well, you never will. Right? Like we never will see the path forward entirely. And you've heard me talk about it here. You've heard me say, like, look, you can see the top of the mountain. It's up there through the clouds, but you can't necessarily see the path in front of you because it's going to change. And so I started thinking about that last night, after I wrapped up the cohort, had a few minutes before I went to bed. I started really thinking about that. How do we take that concept and help more people have that trust? That trust that liberating people and giving them their freedom is so worth it that even though the path itself is a bit unknown, it's worth trekking. It's totally worth it, right? And so it made me think of, one of the famous Steve Jobs quotes. I mean, most people know that I'm a big Steve Jobs fan. And I've often told the story about the first time I heard, here's to the crazy ones, and I saw that ad. I literally cried. Because nothing had resonated so deeply with me, because that's often how I define myself. Like, I must be crazy if I'm thinking this way, and no one else is thinking this way. And yet it was like a complete validation. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it and go into, here's to the crazy ones, Apple. And you'll see, and it's kind of like, this concept of, like, we all know that, people think you're crazy, but we see genius. We think that's how the world changes. The people who think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I think that's who I'm talking to each week. Every Monday, I'm hoping I'm talking to you, someone who in the back of your brain says, I do think we can change this thing. It's a mess. It's a mess. People's lives are being ruined. There's no other way to say it. Their lives are being ruined when they enter and get chewed up in the gears of the system that we all take a part in. Now, there are plenty of people who are getting rich along the way. So there's a big status quo. But if in the back of your brain somewhere you say, no, it's a mess and we have to find a way to do it better, then we have to go to the next quote. And that is that we don't connect the dots looking forward. We connect the dots looking back. That's so true, but most of the time we don't take the time to realize that. Like, no one can see the path forward, no matter how visionary we all think we are. You can't see all of how the dots connect going forward. You can see how they connected going back, and it's often very surprising. When you look back over your shoulder and you say, I never in a million years would have thought those couple of things would somehow connect and produce that thing. Now, if we want to put like the technical side on this, right? If we want to put the actual like science side on this, we can call it complex, emergent systems, right? Adaptive systems. Right? We often talk in the intro cohort and certainly in the CERT courses about this idea of ecosystems and the fact that we are just a part of this greater ecosystem and we have a part to play. And we have to connect. And why? Because we're influencing the entire system in real time. We're determining what the output would be. No one knows what the path forward will be unless you believe in a higher power. Then you believe that in some level the higher power knows what will happen at the end. But none of us will. We're just mere mortals, right? So the idea is we have to keep trudging forward, doing our best in the moment, and then look back later and be surprised how it all connects. And I think there's more to that than just kind of a platitude quote from Steve Jobs. I think if you really dial into it, it starts to get into what is the single most powerful thing that we can do and bring any given day, no matter what we have with us, right? Even if we have nothing with us. We have no tools, we have no table, we have no equipment, we have no money, we have no nothing. We have zero resources. It's just us and our knowledge. We can help make a difference. We can change the trajectory in someone's life. How? Very simple. Feedback loop. Okay? It may be the single most powerful tool that we are not giving as much credit as we should. We're not realizing, when we talk about non-specific effects, what we're not realizing, of course, is that the feedback that we provide is what allows the system to adapt. That's how systems work, right? Think of this thermostat in your house, you know. A sensor goes off when the room gets too cold, which ignites the HVAC system, which heats up the room until the sensor says we're good, and then it shuts the system down. Like, that's feedback. That's system feedback. We are a part in that, and we can be doing so much more of it. I think the thing that I really hope people start to get and gather and connect is that it's in many ways about language. It's in many ways about communication. It's about this idea of that if we have the right mirroring, like literally physiological mirroring, you know, if we're smiling when someone gives us the behavior that we want, if we truly smile, you know, as Dunaway talked about months and months ago, you know, the neurophysiological power of the high five. Like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And if we did more of that, and if we crafted our day deliberately, okay, if we walked into the clinic every day or into the workplace every day or embedded in a population every day with the idea that, look, you are a cast member here, like Disney does. You have a part to play. And when you get the behavior that you want, you light up and give a smile and give some positive feedback. Now, most of us, I will tell you, aren't deliberate enough in that approach. And I know for me, that's one of the things I get out of being a rugby coach. One of the things that I get out of being a rugby coach is that I'm molding the youth. You know, these are 10, 11, 12 years old, maybe all the way up to 14, okay? You know, that's kind of the age group. But what I have done over the years and what I've found has been so effective is I have very, very specific phrases that I use, that I repeat over and over and over again into those situations. And I tell the other coaches, like, if you're going to coach with me, you need to be ready to repeat these phrases. Like, you don't have license to change the language. Why? Because we want consistency over time. And that consistency is what's going to drive behavior, because now the brain starts to get the idea, like, oh, that's what you want me to do. That is what can form a habit. Now, we know that from a health trajectory perspective, so much could be changed if we could control our habits, right? We know, like, everybody gets that. No one is surprised by that when we say, hey, if you would develop an exercise habit and kick that smoking habit, you know, your life could change. Like, that's not new news anymore. Okay, so it's not about educating people. You know, it's not about we're going to walk in the door and wave the flag as like the champion victor who shows up and says, hey, guess what? I've got new technology and news, and it's something you've never heard of before. Now, there might be little wrinkles and things like that in there, but that's not typically what we're going to do. What we're going to do is provide feedback and lay a groundwork for someone so that we can make it easy enough for them to actually do it, for them to influence their systems, and to provide them feedback in a consistent manner so that when they get that consistent feedback, they then carry that language on to the next person. That is cultural transmission, okay? That is what changing the trajectory of large scale all the way down to small units is about. It's about cultural transmission. Now, some people would tell you and argue that that is the thing that makes us uniquely human. You know, they will say, yeah, listen, like, we may think that we pass our genes on, you know, generation after generation, but in addition to that, we also pass our culture on generation to generation. You know, I love that when someone says to me, oh, you know, my family has high cholesterol, you know, my grandparents did, and I almost always ask them, oh, really? Who taught you how to cook and eat? And they kind of pause and they say, yeah, my family, my grandparents. Oh, so not only do you have their genes and their blueprint, but you also have how they operate the machine. Right? You have their operating system. So not only do you have their hardware, but you have their software. What if we change the software? Could we change the hardware? Of course, epigenetics tells us we can, right? But all of that comes back down to consistent information, cultural transmission, and the ability to be consistent over time. Now, I don't want to take too much time. I have about a minute left, okay? That is one of the reasons why we have been so hard on the idea of the elements. Right? Why do we talk about move, fuel, recover, endure, connect? Why are we so bent, at least in our own organization? And I mean, it makes me absolutely excited to see other people, you know, kind of, glomming onto those. But the idea is that consistent language is what can transmit. And that as that language transmit, and we can give consistent feedback. And when we give consistent feedback, we can lay down neural circuits. And when we lay down neural circuits, we can change behavior and make it automatic. And when it's automatic, it goes into the family level and to the town and anywhere else that a person goes. It truly does begin to embed and work its way into all sorts of different scenarios. So I guess what I want to leave it with is this. I found, you know, most people really want a tool. You know, they keep asking me for, like, what's the thing? Like, give me that one thing, and I will tell you that we are working hard on trying to give you things that would give you information. But the best thing they're going to do is give you insights and information. What you need more than anything is feedback. You need that feedback loop, and it has to be very, very, well articulated, deliberate in its approach, and you have to know how to use it consistently. And anybody can do that at any time. I guarantee you know what lights up your patient when you're sitting there with them, or what lights up your athlete when you're coaching them, or what lights up your spouse when you're talking to them. You know that open-ended questions and being engaged and interested, that lights up their brain, okay? And what you can find is that those tweaks, those feedbacks will change their actions. And once you change their actions and you get them consistent, you will change health, right? Changing health is not hard. The downstream of this whole thing is not hard, okay? It's getting people to put the upstream inputs in a long enough time to get the change that's hard. That comes with consistency. That comes with feedback. That's looking backward, not looking forward, okay? That's willing to connect the dots looking back so that we can march forward. All right, I'll leave it there for today. That's my 15 minutes of fame is up for this morning. It's only Monday. I hope that makes some sense. I hope that's not too heady for you, and I hope it's not too out there. I know sometimes that's hard for people. A lot of what I'm saying seems hard for people, and believe me, there are many times where I feel like I am the crazy one, as I've often stated. But the thing that we have to know is that we are wielding an incredible amount of power. This is a perfect time of year to do it. Green shoots, sunshine, spring, it's the right time. People are ready to change. It's a natural change of seasons. We should be absolutely jumping on it with both feet. Give it a shot. You might surprise yourself in how much of an impact you can have. Okay? It's out there for us anytime we want to take it. It's only Monday. It's only Monday. Have a great week. Make it count.